evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The date is Tuesday, February 27, 2024. And I'd appreciate if you turn off your cell phones as this meeting is being recorded. So, Ellen, can you please do the roll call?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Callan Carson?
Here.
Mr. Carey? Mrs. DeRoberts?
Here.
Ms. Hernandez-Williams?
Here.
Mr. Riley?
Here.
Ms. Walters?
Present.
Mr. Weiner?
Here.
Vice Chair, Mr. Lacavoli?
Here.
Chairperson, Mrs. Granato?
Present.
And Weathersfield High School Student Representative, Ms. Mary Dunn.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. And tonight, can I have Andrea Haas come on up here and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Woke you up on that one.
I hope I remember that.
You just have to start it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Emmett, do we have student and staff recognition tonight?
Yes, we certainly do, Mrs. Granato. I'm very pleased to welcome up to the podium Miss Andrea Haas and some of our exceptional artists from Weathersfield High School.
Mary.
Saw that coming.
I'm just gonna find my list here. Okay, I can read it off.
Delightful feeling.
Do that. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for inviting myself and my lovely art students to come and present what we've done this year in relationship to the Scholastic Art Awards. So the Connecticut Regional Scholastic Art Awards is a juried exhibition for students in grades 7 through 12 from throughout Connecticut. And there are about 2,600 entries this year, ish, and about a seventh to a tenth of those are chosen to be included in the exhibit. And there's 3 levels of awards. There's honorable mention, silver key, and then gold key. And the gold key works go on to be judged on the national level in New York City, and they're judged digitally. And then they may or may not receive a medal on the national level. And so we haven't heard yet about the national level, but on the local level, we've had some terrific winners. So we have Sarah Delick in 11th grade, who has a painting. Her self-portrait received a gold key, and here's Sarah. And then we have Alexander Petrushin, who is in 10th grade, who received a gold key for his digital art piece. And he also received a Best in Digital Art category, and his piece is entitled Interrogation. And last week, our postponed snow event awards happened at the Hartford Art School, and they were live streamed, but Alex was there to receive his award. All the top award winners were there. Ava Chaffee, 11th grade digital art, has a gold key for her digital self-portrait. And then with on, we have Madeline Payne, 11th grade, painting gold key, Lost from the World, with her self-portrait, and Maddie's here. So, you might recognize from the self-portrait some of the students. Catherine Webster, who is right here, had 2 pieces in her self-portrait, which is a digital piece entitled Catherine. Received a gold key, and receiving a silver key was her landscape, also digital, Summer Sunset. And we have Carol Tufaga, who I thought would be here, but we're missing Carol. Also had 2 pieces in, and she has a self-portrait entitled "It's Me," and her portrait, which secluded, which received an honorable mention, and her portrait received a silver key. And then Matthew Jorgensen, who was in 10th grade, received a silver key for his digital landscape Sunset Bridge. And now we have Anna, who, can you pronounce your last name? I had Anna for a whole semester, I still cannot pronounce her last name. Manaxikated. Received a silver key for her digital portrait. And then Carol just joined us. We just saw your work, Carol Tufaga. Catherine Freitas received an honorable mention for her digital landscape, Places I've Been. Jamie Xavier Ortiz, who's a senior, and for his painting Bad Habits, received an honorable mention. And a special shout out to Mary Dunn, who not only received 2 awards, a gold key for one drawing and a silver key for the other, but because of her artwork, her drawing, Out with Friends, in particular, the dean at the Hartford Art School chose her to receive a scholarship, and I believe it was $26,000 a year scholarship offer. With the potential to go up to $32,000 a year. So congratulations on that, Mary. And then, in addition to the Scholastic Art Awards, we had Sarah and Xavier, who both received acceptance into the UMass Dartmouth Emerging Artists and Designers 2024 juried exhibition. The exhibition was online, but Sarah's work received an honorable mention, and it will be included in a in-person exhibit at UMass Dartmouth. And so in addition to these, I'm now delivering artwork to the National Art Program, which will have an exhibit at Art Space in Hartford. 6 pieces are going in, and then I have some pieces in addition to an exhibit at the public library on the side, and at the gallery in the high school. We're also delivering some pieces, sending them to WestCon for their artist showcase as well. And so those are the things going on, and congratulations to my students. I could not be more proud of them. So. And if you take a look at the Wethersfield High School Art Department newsletter, you can see all the things that are happening. So.
Okay, thank you. Board members, anybody with a comment? I just want to say thank you, Andrea. You and the students are just an awesome group up at the high school. I love coming in when I can into the gallery, which in itself is spectacular. Everyone, thank you so much. You're so talented. Thank you.
I would like to say, I just want to say congratulations to everybody. It's just amazing work, and I know how hard it is to do many of these pieces, and a lot of people just think, oh, you're just good at art, but a lot of it is a lot of hard work and sweat and tears sometimes, and planning, so I congratulate you. And before you go, if you want to take a picture here, all of you, in front of the slides.
She's our board photographer. Wow, Mary's good. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Andrea, you can bring students up anytime. Thank you. Okay, Next on tonight's agenda is the approval of the minutes for our regular Board of Ed meeting way back on January 23rd, 2024. Are there any corrections? Okay, may I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Those minutes are approved. And also, if there's anyone now, I'll wait till that goes up. Okay, is there anyone wishing to make public comment? Please come on up to the podium and state your name and address, and may I remind you that you have 5 minutes. Okay. Well, I'm glad you came back. Mr. Emmett, you have some communications to share.
Thank you, Mrs. Granato. Good evening again, everyone. I do have a few. I did step out into the hall. I just wanted to congratulate our students and let both they and their parents know how proud we all are of them and their talent. So, Mary, that goes for you as well.
Thank you.
So, just a few items this evening. Right now, at this point in time, we are focused heavily on the budget. You'll hear later on during board comment, we've had thus far 3 public budget workshops over the course of the past 3 out of the 4 Saturdays. We are working on having a presentation before the board on March 12th, our next board meeting, with the expectation that the board would approve the budget and then we would transmit that budget to council by charter no later than March 15th. So we are working hard. I can tell you that there have been a couple of curveballs from the state of Connecticut, 2 of those being excess cost, where the state of Connecticut came in and had a tiered system for excess cost. Weathersfield would have been in the 88% tier. The amount that we actually got was significantly less than that, it was at 70.5%. So we're carrying that in the current operating budget as well as projecting that in next year's budget as well. In addition to that, the magnet school tuition is an item where we were originally told to budget at 58%, that 58% cap. The governor's budget did in fact not carry that 58% cap, so right now we are anticipating 100%. Now, things are subject to change. We have been up at the Capitol quite a bit recently. Was up at the Appropriations Committee meeting. Last week, we also had the legislative breakfast that Mrs. Granato will talk about. So we've been talking with our elected officials and talking about the impact of the budget. In addition to that, I have submitted testimony with regard to the Appropriations Committee and actually attended that hearing. Tomorrow I'll be participating remotely in another Education Committee hearing about consistent and equitable student funding. So that's coming up tomorrow at 10. It'll be on YouTube Live. So there's certainly been a lot of outreach. Again, I appreciate our elected officials at the state level. 2 of the 4 were actually in attendance at the legislative breakfast, and they've been very responsive to our needs. So we're hopeful that when the budget is settled at the state level, we'll see some relief and actually keeping the promise that was made to fund our education system. So I want to give the word out to everybody, traffic safety around schools. That's one thing that is coming to the forefront. So today we met with principals. Principals are going to be providing me with their protocols of pickup and drop-off. We're seeing multiple issues where we have parents dropping off, for example, at Weathersfield High School, up on Wolcott Hill, dropping off on Wolcott Hill and then doing a U-turn on Wolcott Hill. Extraordinarily unsafe. We're also seeing safety issues at Hanmer. We're seeing some safety issues at Highcrest as well. Obviously, the key piece here is to make sure that everybody is patient. Please follow the guidelines. So we'll be sending out a communication. It'll be a joint communication with myself and Chief Rafael Medina of the Weathersfield Police Department. It's going to be education to start. And eventually, if you're not adhering to protocols around our schools, it's going to be a warning, and then ultimately, unfortunately, the potential of a ticket. So we want to get the word out. We have to make sure that all of our kids are safe. Mm-hmm. It is an area where it is very busy between buses and between cars, many cars. So moving forward, we'll get that communication out. Principals have been good about reminding everybody over the course of the year, but we forget. So let's make sure that we're all patient around pickup and drop-off time around all of our schools, and let's watch out for those youngsters. With regard to attendance, we continue to run ahead of last year's attendance mark for the month of February. We're seeing a continued reduction in the frequency of COVID and flu. Norovirus, you might have seen in the Hartford Courant today, there was an article about norovirus being a big issue in schools across the state. Here in the Central Connecticut Health District, we're starting to see the norovirus prevalence rate head down. There's a slight dip for this week. You'll have that in your Friday update. Winter sports are in the process of winding down. I believe the girls' basketball team is taking on Bethel in the playoffs. In addition to that, the boys' hockey team will also be headed to the playoffs as well. So we'll have a little bit of a reprieve, and then it is right on to spring sports. We have a variety of spring productions that are coming up in the month of March. I know Weathersfield High School is preparing for theirs in the middle of March. We've also got a great production of Mary Poppins coming up at Silas Dean Middle School. I cannot wait to see that. I believe we're actually inviting our sixth graders over to see the production and kind of get a flavor of what middle school life is like. So it'll be coming up on, I believe it's March 13th and 14th over the course of 2 days. So we're certainly looking forward to that. I did attend the Career Advisory Board meeting last evening along with Mr. Riley. We are preparing for the upcoming career fair as well as the business breakfast. So we're still looking to bring in additional businesses that might be interested in partnering with us and tapping into the limitless potential of our Weathersfield High School students. So there'll be more information forthcoming as we get closer to that date. And I did mention the legislative breakfast. Bobby, Janice, and myself attended. Amy Morin-Bello, along with Senator Matt Lesser, also attended. What we heard from our legislative team and the legislators at the state level is that they hope that the governor keeps his promise and fully funds education where it needs to be. So there'll be lots more coming forward with that. We'll certainly keep everybody in the loop as we get through budget season and we head on to spring. It's coming before you know it. And with that, it's communications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, as we move on, we have, and I'm very excited about a number of curriculum changes tonight, and we'll be using a slightly different setup for our action items. Each motion is asking for an approval of a consent agenda. So for clarity, each motion tonight has numerous curriculum changes. These curriculum changes for our high school were introduced and discussed with our teacher presenters at our Student Programs and Services Committee chaired by Janice DeRoberts. The board is voting on many curriculum changes in just 2 motions. So we'll get started. And by the way, the first motion has 35 changes and the second one has 10. So Christina, would you please read motion 6A?
Yes, approval of consent agenda, proposed course changes at Weathersfield High School.
Thank you. Are there any corrections to this agenda 6A?
We need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, we need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I'm trying to get into this here, I know. You have read all of them. There's 35 of them. So we have a second. Is there any discussion on any of those items?
Hi, Bobby. I'd like to discuss number 24,
Okay.
which is the deletion of AP Economics. While I agree to the overall consent agenda, because even if I am opposed to one of the course solutions, I wouldn't be able to change the vote anyway. So I will agree to it. But what concerns me is, and I hope that this is not an ongoing pattern, is by deleting the AP Economics, I do feel that when we remove these higher level courses from what Weathersfield can offer, that we do weaken our ability to compete with other districts applying to our state schools, such as UConn and the other state schools. While not every, district can offer the breadth of what like an E.O. Smith can offer in terms of AP or ECE courses, they're right next to UConn, so obviously they have the benefit of that. But I do not think that we should be getting rid of any of the existing ones that we do have. As we discussed in our budget meeting this past weekend, when you remove things, it is so very difficult to get things back, and I would imagine that applies to curriculum as well. My preference would be that we have multiple teachers and not just a dependency, a key person dependency on one who can teach the AP Economics class. My understanding is that there's 68 students in the Level 1 class, and I'm sure that if we were able to offer some additional bench strength, materials, my understanding was that there was some difficulty in getting materials for that class, that we might be able to drum up some interest and have kids go into that AP Economics class. To that end, I don't agree that the resolution should be cutting the class. I think that we should be building the bench strength, and that's something I'll be looking to support going forward.
Thank you. Thank you for how you disagreed. Thank you. Christina?
Yes, so I just want to make a comment that the reason it's getting deleted is because it's difficult to find the certification to teach AP Economics, and that's not just a Weathersfield issue, it's a state issue. So I agree with you, Liz, completely, because it is such an important course in the 21st century, but it's difficult to offer a course if the certification's not there. So we don't want to be teaching a course that doesn't have a teacher that is capable to teach that. So I agree that we need someone, that opportunity to have certification opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Janice.
I'm not clear about that. I do think that they do have the certification for it. I think the issue was that social studies involves a lot of different topics, and that the teachers who are currently teaching social studies so well are not feeling 100% confident about teaching it. And honestly, I didn't think to ask if that had anything to do with the AP scores once the students decide to take them. But I don't believe it was a certification
I
issue.
understand, it's just that it's a specific, I mean, you have to have a strength in economics. So I think that's it's a
Oh,
social
really?
study. So you
Okay,
could
my
be-
understanding was they
So
could.
and we can definitely clarify that in student programs, but
Okay.
I think that's the thing. So for example, a biology course, if the teacher doesn't have the strength in biology, you could be a science teacher and teach multiple subjects, but that biology teacher should really be able to feel comfortable teaching the concepts in that course. So I think it's specifically like almost like a specialty in that subject area. So I think,
Okay.
that would propose a bigger problem if we have students taking a course and they're not getting taught the right way.
Okay, thank you. Any other corrections?
I have a comment. I just want to say, I noticed the art changes and the different classes that are being offered for art as we kind of segue from some art awards, and I was just really happy to see some of those, some of the new different choices with printmaking, drawing, also some of the theater classes, like in drama, that was really, it's just, my daughter's probably jealous, she's at UConn now, that she didn't get to take some of these, but I'm really excited to see these other options, these electives that'll enlarge the arts and also, English department.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's take a vote on this. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? So our consent agenda for motion 6A passes. Thank you. So Jim, would you please read motion 6B?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda 2 for curriculum.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on this? Quieter group this time, okay. All right, so we'll go into voting here. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? And that motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That was a lot of work. Thank you.
Make a
Yeah.
comment just about these courses. This evening, we once again have evidence of how responsive our staff is to the changing needs of our students, our teachers, and also along with the changing times and requirements. Our teachers work to remediate weaknesses and to facilitate our students' transition to post-secondary learning, whatever form that may take. The reason for our new courses, course modifications, name changes, deletions, often interconnect, as in the art. We were replacing Art 1 Foundations with Art Foundations to make it a half-credit course, so there'd be more time for more in-depth learning about different media, as Marjorie had mentioned. And then with the second sheet with just additions, course additions, that's also just shows how responsive our staff is to the needs and interests of our students when the students communicate those to them. And writing course descriptions with all the elements of a course for the board's review is a lot of work. Researching and gathering together all of those elements for the course itself represents a monumental body of work, much of which is done before even knowing if the course will be approved. I'm so thankful to these teachers and Dr. Slayton for believing in the value of their work and in our Wethersfield students enough to continuously make this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to Jim again for one more action item, motion 6C.
Thank you, Bobby. It's moved that the Wethersfield Board of Education approve the Increasing Educator Diversity Plan for it to be submitted to the State Department of Education as is required by Public Act 23-167, Section 10, and that the superintendent be authorized to make further edits to the plan based on recommendations coming from the state office.
Thank you. Is there, we didn't do a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion on this? Michael?
Yeah, this is a state mandate that is required for our submission. This submission is due by March 15th. So the document that you have before you is a living, breathing document. I think that we are certainly not starting from scratch when it comes to working on increasing our educator diversity. You know, this year is our third year in the participation of the teacher residency program that this board has supported. In addition to that, we're doing a lot with recruiting staff members of color, and we are definitely keyed in on making sure that we are creating an environment for our students where we have staff members that look like them. So this, upon your approval this evening, will be submitted to the State Department of Education, and I will report to the board if there are any updates coming from the state.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussions? Okay, let's vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 6C passes also. Thank you, everyone. That was a lot tonight. All right, and we also have some very important presentation. They're always important. This is on trauma-informed restorative practices presentation. Sally and crew. Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Webb, Assistant Principal at Wethersfield High School, and myself and members of the high school, middle school, and Charles Wright staff are going to discuss with you a little bit about the work that we've been doing across all of our schools related to trauma-informed restorative practices. We began our work with this 3 years ago with Joe Brummer, who is sort of a renowned restorative practices guru, you could say. He's worked with each of our schools individually, and to be honest, I've learned a lot about ultimately how to work with kids who, especially kids who come to us and have challenges and are oftentimes some of the kids we spend, as myself as an assistant principal, I spend most of my time with. So you did have homework, and I'm hoping you met your friend Ann's, who is the individual that is in this video. There's a 15-minute video. If you didn't get to see it, you can watch it after, and probably then our presentation will make a lot more sense. But we'll do our best to try to fill in the gaps anyway.
Good evening. My name is Kelsey Kapelchinsky. I'm a math teacher at the high school. So one of the big reasons we have restorative practices now is over the past number of years, there's been a lot more research that has come out on how the brain has actually works. So that's one of the reasons that this kind of started. So you can see the diagram here by Bruce Perry, the hierarchy of brain function. So as a teacher, we expect most of our students to be in that higher order thinking, that kind of top tier of your brain power. We want them to problem solve, we want them to be able to do critical thinking, but there's a lot of other pieces that need to come into play in order for your brain to kind of reach that point. So the lowest level of our brain is our brainstem, which really has those bodily functions that we don't really think about. So our blood pressure, our heart rate, things that kind of happen that we don't necessarily consciously think about. And those kind of come into play when you're feeling safe, right? So if you're feeling safe, those things are normal, they're regulated, right? All of your bodily functions are working well. Then we move on to your midbrain, right? Which are the things, right, your needs that you think about. So you had a good night's sleep, you were able to eat breakfast, you were able to have a good lunch, you have those bodily needs, right, met that we can do. As you move forward, we have the limbic system, which focuses on our emotional regulation. So we need our emotions to be regulated. We need to be able to do that in order to reach that higher order thinking. So our brains are in flux with this throughout the day. It's not, some students might come into school, right, they've had a good breakfast, they had a good night's sleep, and then something happens and then they become dysregulated and they move down to a lower order of their brainstem. So students who have gone through trauma, right, may come into school at a lower level of their brain. Their brain interacts with the environment different than someone who maybe has not gone through trauma before. So it's just important to kind of understand this and understand that our brain is constantly kind of moving through these different pieces during the day, and the restorative practices help us learn how to get students to get to that higher order so we can get them to access our curriculum and get them to where we need to be.
So in my role as an administrator, I'm often dealing with students that are in the bottom part of that triangle, and they are not regulated, they are dysregulated. So they might be, highly anxious, their blood pressure might be up, they're agitated, they're angry. That bottom part is the fight, flight, freeze sort of phase of our being. And the only way that I can't go right to reason and say, like, hey, why did you do that, when I have a kid who's in my office and who's totally just out of sorts. I actually have to work on co-regulating with that student. So part of what I need to do, and this is where the challenge with trauma-informed practices is, it takes time. I have to sit with that student. I have to give them the space. Later on in the presentation, you'll hear about those spaces that we have created in our buildings. But for me, in my office, I have to create that space. I have to let them be. And then eventually I need to relate to them. And then what that means is saying, I understand how you're feeling. I could see how this is what is going on. I need to work with them and partner with them so that they can actually, because what happens is, as humans, we connect to who's around us. So if I'm highly agitated and I'm screaming at a kid, that kid's probably going to scream right back at me. But if I take that time and sort of calm myself down and keep myself regulated, then I can get that student to a place where potentially once we get to that reasoning level, we can work on whatever the problem was, whatever the thing is that happened, whatever the challenge was or incident that occurred, and we can begin to solve problems. You want to both do it, or you want to do it? You go. Both do it. You go first.
So
when you have a brain exposed to trauma versus not trauma, right, different things happen. And if you saw in the video and other places, trauma isn't always the thing that you think of first. It's not, usually you think trauma, you think something, right, like car accident, something very, right, intense that happened. But trauma can be really anything, right? As a collective, we all went through COVID, right, together, and that left a lot of trauma for a lot of students. It impacted a lot of staff. So that kind of weighs on all of us. We all have that trauma, and it can be kind of brought up at any point by any type of trigger that can kind of come about.
See, this is how we do it, teamwork. Yeah, and so trauma can also be childhood adverse experiences, but I think the reason why COVID especially was highlighting is that our kids went through very different experiences at home alone, and especially the kids that we have now really in our formative years, and that's our 9th, 10th, and even 11th graders ultimately. They were in 5th and 6th grade, and they may have been in a role, some students may have had it where they had a parent home, and they had lunch, and they had dinner, and they were able to go outside and run and play and do whatever. And COVID might be for them a memory of amazing times, but then there are other students that we have that we know who probably were caring for a younger sibling, who were wondering, who had a parent that was working, who may have been challenged by deaths in their family. And so coming back from COVID and coming into into life in our school, we acknowledge and recognize that we got some kids that were greatly impacted. Not to mention we have populations of students, no matter who they are and what they look like, carry whatever it is that they have behind closed doors of their homes when they walk into school.
Good evening, I'm Scott Voisin, Assistant Principal at Silas Dean Middle School. What is restorative practice? This comes directly from the Wethersfield Public Schools Restorative Vision revised in 2023. Restorative practices utilize strategies that support community building and preventative practices to support positive, safe, and nurturing learning environments. These practices will help our students as they grow to become successful and productive members of the community. In addition, this approach is used school-wide with all stakeholders, including students, staff, and families.
So when we're thinking about restorative practices in the school, I'm Charlene Maddock. I teach 7th grade science at Silas Dean Middle School. And when we're thinking about those restorative practices, we're thinking about a lot of things we actually do in action in the schools. I'm going to highlight 4 of those for you. Respect agreements, restorative language and communication, circles, and regulation spaces. So respect agreements are actually agreements created in the classroom communities and in the school community by students, for students. It's a way for them to think about what they want their community to look like. And then they come up with ways of what it's going to look like and what it's going to sound like in their community. The way that they do that is they look at what they want their community to look like from student to student, what they want it to look like from student to teacher, from teacher to student, and in their actual environment, student to space. These are unique agreements. This is an agreement that's actually hung in my classroom that our team worked on together. And it's a living document. It's not something that once we hang it up, it's on the wall, but we never refer to it. It's something that we look at as a community and see if we need to change, see if we need to edit, see if we need to add to. So this is the original one, but in my classroom there's actually Sharpie on it, because as a community we came together and said, hey, we're missing some things here as a community. How can we look at this together and revise it? And what's unique about this is because it's student created, they have a different level of accountability to it because they've developed it and it's how they want their community and their classroom to look.
Restorative language and questions provide opportunities to restore relationships and promote a positive community. We want those involved to be heard, understand their impact understand the impact of their actions, and repair the harm and ultimately the relationship. We use a series of restorative questions listed on the right of this slide to help guide that conversation. So instead of going through the questions, I wanted to provide like a real-world example as a middle school principal, something that I've dealt with. So there's a food fight in the cafeteria. And very early in my administrative career, there would be a consequence for the student, and that would be the end of it. Using restorative practices would require, and ultimately another way to handle it would be to meet with the student, the building custodian, and maybe the cafeteria staff, so that they can share the student can share what was going through their mind when it happened, but the custodial staff could also share the impact it has that the incident had on them. For example, if it happens during the first lunch wave, our custodians have a few minutes to prepare for the second lunch wave. So the custodian might share, the mess that you've left in the cafeteria, I have to hustle around and get this cleaned up before the next group comes in, and the cafeteria staff might talk about how that puts them behind because maybe they had to give students lunches that they didn't know about to replace some of the food that was thrown. It's making everyone that's involved understand the impact that they've had on everyone else, which is much different than very early in my administrative career. That's one example, but these examples happen. We have many of these conversations, all of us, on a daily and weekly basis. But I think it was more important to share like a real world example of, and these are some of the questions that we may use to get feelings out, thoughts out, and determine the impact that the situation or accident had.
Another way that we build community in our schools is through circles. And so circles can be used in a variety of ways. You can have academic discussions in circles. You can build connections and community in circles, and so trying to allow students to get to know each other and to check in with students, to show gratitude. There's also circles for social and emotional learning and dealing with hurt. And so very recently at our school, we have trained students to be circle leaders. And so those circle leaders identified some concerns that they thought were really important in our school that they wanted to bring to the rest of the student body. And so the topic that they chose was vandalism. That they had noticed that there was some vandalism happening in the school and they were unhappy about it and wanted to have a community circle. So the student circle leaders came to our den groups and talked with 7th grade students about vandalism. And we had a circle and we talked about the impact it had on our school, on our community, and as a group, we tried to come up with some solutions for that issue. It was a really powerful thing to have students discuss something that was concerning to them and to have them try and work with the rest of the students on how we can move forward from that. And so these circles are a really positive way of continuing to build community. They are also a way to resolve situations, and we have something called harm circles and discuss the harm that has been caused and how we can restore that harm. And so it's a very powerful tool for building a positive community.
There are many examples of regulation spaces used in the schools. This is a place or space that students can go to when they are feeling dysregulated. This provides them the opportunity to decompress and get themselves back on track. One example that is used at both the middle school and high school is the Wellness Center. Students can access this room at any point in their day. The center should not be used as a consequence of negative behavior, but rather to help a student learn how to regulate their behaviors and develop better social, emotional skills with the help of our staff. At the SDMS Wellness Center, there are a number of stations, including Mindful Coloring Station, sensory activities, a calming corner with music, and a breathing exercise wall.
Good evening. I'm Glenn Porter, principal of Charles Wright Elementary School. Back 20 years ago, I'd say knowledge is power, and we'd all be right there and know exactly what that is. Tonight, I'm going to say, as we focus on accountability, that to know better is to do better. And very often, we must remember that our children are coming in, they're young, and it's during these formative years that they must learn what life will be like and how to maneuver through it. Accountability. Gosh, when we first started all of this, many parents and community members were thinking, yeah, but where's the punishment? Oh, I wasn't ready for that, but I'll go there. Accountability. Where's the punishment for all of that? And you really need to realize that there's 5 dimensions of accountability in restorative. And you can either look at them as punitive, but it's much better to look at through learning. Number 1, acknowledging that you have caused harm with your actions and behaviors. Do you know how hard that is? Try apologizing to the person that you just did wrong to. Many of us turn, walk away, won't get to that part. And that's what accountability of restorative is all about. You've done something, you made a mistake. We learn best from our mistakes. But the accountability is making a child realize they've done harm. And often, children don't know or realize that the episode they just had where they threw books around the room or something caused harm to others. They only see it as, I'm letting off my steam, or I was angry. But that's the first step of restorative. If once the child is regulated and you're starting the questions of what happened, tell me what happened. Part of the question that goes, what were you thinking? Was anybody harmed? Then you can start talking about, okay, how do we make things right? So holding a person accountable to what they did is a minor step, an important step, but it's done through simple, regulated conversation between the adult and the child. Second part of accountability is understanding how others were affected. So often we don't understand the diversity among us. We don't understand when we make a mistake that is horrifying to someone else. Mistakes can be some examples. Vaping by a 6th grader is a mistake. It happens, and it's hard to believe that it goes all the way down into elementary school. It's not about punishing. They are just about learning the damage that vaping can do to both themselves and of others. So sitting down and saying, you really don't know everything there is about this, let's look into it. Let's take a day, and I'm going to give you time to research all about it. And then you can present that to a few teachers to show us what you've learned. Rather than calling it simply a suspension, how much learning happens during an outside school suspension or even an in-school suspension? Let's turn it into a learning experience on what that child needs. If they don't know about the dangers of vaping, give them the opportunity to learn, present, and teach others, even their peers. Another example of that would be a racial slur. If a child has not lived the history or has not had the history taught generation to generation to generation to know how offensive racial slurs can be, perhaps reading a book that teaches what it was like growing up during sharecropper time and how life has changed through Jim Crow rules and laws and how that has impacted one culture that our children are so far removed from now. And having those genuine conversations or summaries chapter by chapter, far better than a punitive in-school, out-of-school suspension. That's holding a child accountable for what they don't know and what they need to learn in a very sincere, genuine manner. Next would be realizing the importance of taking steps to heal the harm, to repair it. That happens in those 6 questions that we go through. What can you do to make things right? After, in a circle, when a child explains to the person who has harmed them why it feels so bad, I've had students just go into tears of genuine remorse, saying, I never realized. I was wrong. Please forgive me. I'll try never to do that again. That doesn't happen in in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions. It rarely happens in our lives as adults sometimes. But this is holding children accountable, and it's not pushing, it's not forcing, it's just letting them learn through the process. Sometimes it's giving back to the community. I know my friend Scott shared about food fights. It doesn't hurt to go clean up the cafeteria after such an event to help realize, wow, that's what the custodian, oh, that's kind of gross. Yeah, it is. And that's what we have to do. Making a concrete plan is the final step of accountability. What do we need to go through? What do we need to agree? What kind of agreements need to be made between you and the person you offended, or you and the teacher, or you and the school, to make sure this doesn't happen again? And put it in writing, so that if it happens again, you come back and can say, and my style might be a little different, they're all dated, and so they come in, and I call it our celebration time. Wow, I haven't seen you in 3 months. That's incredible. Congratulations. What have you done? Oh, I made a mistake. What mistake? I did it again. Well, you still had 3 months that before you couldn't reach that. Congratulations. Now let's work through what we need to adjust and get you farther. And imagine I know we're looking at Ross Green for our Tier 2, Tier 3 students through this process as well, to find the unresolved problems they're experiencing that they need to heal through, and also the lagging skills. And this process of accountability deals with all the lagging skills of our students, social and emotionally. And in a friendly manner, but one that does have consequences, because I have to write it down as a word of, oh, yes, you're having an in-school suspension, but let's not look at it that way. Let's look at it as a day of learning, and let's do some work.
Hi, I'm Nicole Antonelli. I'm 6th grade at Charles Wright. Talk a little bit about our 3-year plans and the professional development that has gone into this. So back in August of 2021, each school developed a restorative team, and we have met with Joe Brummer every summer since then. Part of the beginning of our work was creating our 3-year plan, and our 3-year plan has moved along as we've moved along in the process. But Joe has helped us work through the different components of looking at how to make a plan that is viable, that we can use across school years. The restorative teams then took that training back to their schools. We had professional development in restorative circles, the respect agreements, what trauma-informed practices look like, what the trauma-informed, or what the trauma brain also looks like. We had the opportunity, each of the schools, to utilize some time with Joe Brummer. At Charles Wright, we invited him to a couple of staff meetings where he came and taught the staff more about that, the brain and how the brain works and what trauma looks like. Joe, at the beginning of the school year, Charles Wright did walkthroughs for climate. And so we just kind of took a walk around the school and looked at where we're at, and then we sat and he gave us some suggestions of next steps. Joe came to our February 16th professional development, which it says we will host him. This was supposed to be 2 weeks ago. He came and talked with us about those Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. And we've had opportunities to read his book, do some book studies as a school, as as each school. Going forward, we have a couple of things that we're thinking about. Currently, we're reviewing our restorative practices. It's something that each of the restorative teams does at Charles Wright. We meet monthly and we review where we're at, what are our next steps, what do we need to do. We used Joe's checklist today to kind of look through where we're at, what are the areas for growth going forward. Moving forward, the Wethersfield plans to focus on parent engagement as part of the process. As Glenn mentioned, Ross Green's work with his ALSAP in Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, and as they mentioned at the secondary level, bringing those circle keepers down to the elementary level, which would be peer mediation in the past, but trying to include students in the process as well.
Now I have some good news for you. Since we started this all in 2020, 2021, Wethersfield is far in advance. And here's the law that we're all held to. By 2023, 2024, all our paraprofessionals have to have been introduced to the principles and practices of social emotional learning and restorative practices. That probably has started happening 2 years ago. So we're in good shape there. School climate specialist or principal is required to have training in restorative practices and to implement evidence and research-based interventions, including restorative practices. Another check. It's already been done. We're well on our way. Beginning with 24-25, which isn't until next year, training requirements include resources and training on social emotional learning, check. School climate and culture, check. And evidence and research-based interventions, including but not limited to restorative practices, check. Now it's up to you and you have time. Because the law states that for the school year commencing July 1st, 2025, each Board of Ed must adopt a restorative practice response policy to be implemented by school employees for incidents of challenging behavior and school conflict. We're well in advance where we have things going, moving, and now it's your turn. Take the reign.
As it relates to our district improvement plan and restorative practice, how they connect, I think first and foremost, it's that first priority. I highlighted empathetic because ultimately what we're hoping to do is to increase the capacity of our students to be empathetic. But where I've seen the most growth in this is to see, especially at the high school level, our staff has gained an understanding about themselves, how we all operate. That was the thing that I kind of took from that Ann's video, is I recognized when my heart rate gets going, what's happening, and my past, and why I am how I am. And the importance of understanding myself then relates to then how I can relate to students. So that empathetic piece has really been something that we've strived for as an administrative team with all of our staff, and we've seen that. And I would say in the course of the time that I've been at the high school, we've seen an improvement in our suspension rates in the sense that they have lessened. There have been conflicts that we have been able to intervene. So when I look at priority 2, we have more kids in classrooms, and we have more kids, hopefully, that are able to access student achievement because they are highly because they are in a safe place. They feel safe in our classrooms, because that's first and foremost. And then lastly, and I can say, Kelsey is one of the teachers that I know every period is standing at the door outside of her door as students walk in, and she can get sort of a quick little read on every student as they come in. And knowing that is like the first step when you have your kids in the classroom, and your hope that if you know that there's that one student that needs a little something when they come into the classroom and a little check, that their ability to reach the same outcome as the peer next to them who's maybe in a different place can be matched, and you can have that equitable outcome, because you know you can't really treat every single student the same way based on what you think how they all should be, but it's really more important to know that they all come how they are, and that we then can, whether we need to in that moment co-regulate or maybe just relate, or we know that they're ready to go and we just join and jump into the lesson.
So you've seen the vision of the graduate before, right? These are the pillars that we're hoping all of our students have by the time they walk across, right, this stage. So restorative practices, right, ties in really well for this. Our middle pillar of problem solver, right? In order to be a problem solver, we need to reach that higher level of thinking. So we need our students to feel safe. We need them to be regulated so that they can get to that problem solving step and take that skill with them as they leave. The communicator and collaborator with the circles, they're learning how to communicate with people. They're learning how to navigate difficult situations and just be a communicator in the situations that maybe aren't so easy to be communicators and collaborators in. So the restorative practices really, right, help our students in all the ways.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Stay there. I think people have questions. Anyone with a question for them? First of all, I want to comment on the video. The video is excellent. The video helped me more than anything else has in a long time to get to an understanding of these restorative practices, because it gave me an understanding of what trauma is. I had a whole different understanding of it. So this really helped me, but I do have a question or two. Number one, just because time is so precious, our students are more precious, but time is, does restorative practice like interrupt a lot of academics that are going on? This is my thought, that it does that.
I can speak for my own classroom. So as Tyler was saying, I do stand at the front door every day and greet my students, and you can kind of tell, you have a idea of what they're going to be like every day. So for example, today I have a student who walked in and she's always happy to see me. Hey, how are you? And today she just zoomed past and even looked me in the eye, and I was like, okay, so there's something going on and I need to address her. So in my classroom, what I do is I get that kind of initial check-in, and then I walk around and I have while students are working on a warm-up, they have an individual homework check, so I come around and I have that one-on-one interaction. So with that one student, I was able to just quickly say, hey, like, what's going on? You don't seem yourself, and we had a really quick discussion, and we were able to move forward, and she was great the rest of the period, but she just needed someone to check in with her and know that someone cared about what was going on in her life. We have a lot of students who access the Wellness Center. It's usually a quick come back to class, and our students have gotten very good at accessing it. They know that they have a need in the moment, so at least at the high school they'll go and come back within usually 15-20 minutes, and they're able to access most of the lesson, whereas before those students may have not even come to class. They may have been wandering the hallway, just anything else that we don't want them to be doing. So I don't know.
So initially, having this wellness center and opening it up, we knew there would be challenges. We were going to find the students who really loved the wellness center, and it was the place to be because it was calm and quiet and wasn't all that stressful. But we do have a sign in and a sign out, and the staff that we have in there, ultimately, they say you have 15 minutes. It is a phone-free zone, and the opportunity for them to, generally what happens, and what's kind of cool with our wellness center with these, is there's a circle, and the kids just sit and kind of chat and talk. They come with their own issues, and they help each other. And the social worker might be involved in the conversation, might not be, but when the time comes, it's like, okay, you're good, and you go back. We monitor too because we want to make sure that we don't have students who are out of the classroom for long periods of time and missing what they need to be getting in the class. We don't use circles in the classroom as much because ours is much more academic focused, but I can say in terms of my job and having, harm circles and having kids get together and trying to restore what's happened, that happens a lot, but that's outside of the set, that's a one-off. That's not something that happens. I'm glad it doesn't happen regularly. So, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted you to know that I'm not being critical of it. I'm just looking at the day by every day aspect of it, and the accountabilities. That's actually what I was getting at.
Well, let me go back to yours from the elementary school level. Our day has changed once we adopted the social emotional learning. So that comes in one period at our school. It comes in on Mondays, so that because it's a theme, and then every teacher teaches through the week wherever it fits in to their schedule, but there's explicit instruction on a Monday. Then every morning, every class does a morning meeting, and that's also in the schedule. 15 minutes where every staff member in our building joins in some classroom.
So that's what that was. Okay, I got that too.
Okay, and that's where we're building relationships. So it's more the proactive. We don't always want it to be reactive. We want it to be proactive.
Right.
So those two steps are proactive, so we can deal with some things, and just if something happens today, we can wait till tomorrow's morning meeting. It's the ones that happen quickly, and that normally, like at Charles Wright, one way to manage things that happen, children will get sent to the office. Well, the first question is, come down, just tell me what happened, in writing. Because that gives the office staff time to decide, okay, is the social worker grabbing this one, the psychologist, the principal, who's going to grab this one? And we work as a team to then sit down with the child or this circle of children. But it's all broken out because you can't go into a circle, a harm circle, without first meeting with one child to find out how they've been harmed, then to find out who's involved in that. So if a classroom teacher tried to do that every day in every situation, it'd be no time, Bobby, none. Okay? You would say, Glenn, I'm done. Because you're there to teach English, reading, writing, arithmetic, all of that other stuff. So this time has been a real learning of how do we balance this new method and find the time. And so yes, there are teachers who are feeling, I can't handle this. Then let's figure out how we reuse our staff more effectively. For example, I know Unified Arts teachers are now addressing social emotional learning in times when they don't have classes. And so we pass off, but it's all about creating a structure, and every school is in a different place, that now we can use this new method within. Now you can ask your accountability question.
No, but thank you. I just couldn't figure out how you got everything done all day. I mean, between the academics and social and emotion, but it's also important. If the child isn't there, they're not going to learn. That's how it works. But anyone else? Go ahead.
Just my sense is that as much as it, you need the time to do that, that ultimately you're spending less time with repetitions of the same problem. And you don't get anywhere, the student doesn't get anywhere, and everybody just gets more and more frustrated. Is that correct? Okay, and I just want to say the video, I think a lot of us who are parents and have been teachers, we have a little bit of the parent guilt, but we also get to have the teacher guilt. So watching the video, really it just kind of calmed me. It was a really good thing to see, it calmed a little bit of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. I learned so much, and I appreciate your time with that. I also love how proactive all of your efforts have positioned Wethersfield Public Schools for when this does go into effect. My question is around the victims and the support that they receive. Because referencing the food fight example, which was a great example, the adults were brought in to help here, explain what the impact was to them. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think it'd be far easier for adults to explain what that impact is. They have the maturity, the developed maturity, and, they understand what's going on. But as a young child, I would imagine to really get those harm circles to be of benefit, they have to put themselves in a very vulnerable place. And that's something that I think you build upon in your years. What kind of support is provided to the victims to help them through that? Because to me, restorative practice shouldn't just be about, someone who needs some knowledge and some learning opportunities, but the victim as well. How is the victim supported?
I can just speak for the high school, that whenever I talk with a student that's been on the, you could say, on the other end, that's been harmed, my intent is to go in as an ally for them, so that they know that I'm there, not in it taking any particular position, but that I want to make sure that their voice is heard and they're heard. I also will say, if they don't want to, it's not like, no, you have to, and it doesn't have to be something that is immediate. So it's also like, do you want to maybe come back to this in a couple days? I'll check in with you tomorrow, we'll see where you're at. That's at our level. I know it's different at the lower levels, so.
Thank you.
I can speak to that for a little. In some of the situations I've dealt with, going back to what you said, it takes a lot of time, because when someone harms someone, you want to make sure that they're apologizing for the right reasons, and they're not just doing it because an adult has called them out on their actions. So, but I also, and I'm sure most of us, take into how the victim's feeling. Some people just want an address and don't want to be part of the circle, and some are adamant about the fact that they want to be part of the circle so they can share with the person how it impacted them and how it made them feel. So some of these things take a very long time, and sometimes it doesn't happen on that day. They need time to process it, think about it, and determine if that's something that they're open to.
I was just going to say, also, it's being facilitated by the teacher or an adult in the room. It's not one kid complains about another kid, so you say, all right, go off in the hallway and good luck, come back when you have it fixed. It's being led, and so the voices, the person leading it is making sure that all of the voices are heard and that a resolution is reached in the end.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much. I'm learning more and more about restorative practices, and I appreciate it, and the board appreciates it. Thank you. Go ahead, Sally.
I wasn't going to speak because I told them that they're the A team today, sharing. But I just want to also share that our vision is that this is bigger and this is community-wide. So conflict within the community, it ties into our social justice work and having a conversation and hearing perspectives and civil conversations. It ties into our HR work. Sometimes we have conflict between adults. We bring them in circles. We have, apply these processes. We look at our handbook. We were talking about core syllabi recently, right? So this work and this approach isn't just about students and the work with students. It is the work in our community. And our vision is it gets bigger and bigger, and it's how we approach and learn both within our public schools, within adult interactions, and within our greater community. So two neighbors might have conflict, that they can, approach us in a civil way, and somebody can help almost mediate or have a conversation. These skills will translate into a community that is inclusive, and is trauma-informed and welcoming, which I think is our larger goal as a community. So your support with Restorative and our journey through Restorative, helping other people really understand, it's not just a thing we do, it's everything we do, and the philosophy we take with interacting with humans and kindness and empathy and understanding each other is critically important, because if we want to just find out who's wrong and punish them, we know that's not going to get anywhere, right? So your support in this is really critically important in our community lens of moving this forward. So thank you for your support, and thank you, A-Team.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
Okay. We'll wait for Jim to do his thing here. Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Matt Lacavoli will give us the latest updates on our Weathersfield Public School policies.
Thank you, Bobby. So the Policy and Planning Committee met what seems now ages ago on Monday, February 5th. The committee performed a first read of 10 changes to model policies, which were recommended by the Board of Ed Legal Counsel Shipman and Goodwin. These are before you all now, so please reach out if you have any comments or questions concerning them. Two of the 10 recommended policy changes were tabled for further review and discussion, one of them having to do with purchasing. It was tabled for a review to see how the model policy was affected by the town charter, which also has language having to do with purchasing and town expenditures. Additionally, we wanted the policy to be looked at by our finance office. The second policy we tabled had to do with the age of admission to public schools. We wanted our curriculum specialists to take a look at it to offer input on timelines and deadlines. Those two will be discussed at the next committee meeting. 4 of the policies we updated were not policy changes per se, but rather technical revisions to insert recommended language pertaining to artificial intelligence and its responsible use and application by district employees and students. The most discussion centered around policies pertaining to how students can find their way into courses that offer challenging curriculum. It was the agreement of the committee that the Wethersfield Public School System will make every effort to offer students the ability to take challenging courses. We want more of that, not less. And if a student has shown the ability to achieve, we will promote that. Again, we will meet on March 26th.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a lot of Board of Ed meetings that have been held, so we'll start in with their chairs. The Facilities and Maintenance Committee, we met on January 24th. John, can you meet?
Yes, also feels like a long time ago. Thank you, Bobby.
Yes.
So at the Facilities Committee, and back on January 24th, we talked a lot about results from the Ad hoc Building Committee that could conclude before that. So we talked a lot about the options that were discussed in that committee meeting. We looked over the options and are ready to start looking further into the data. We'll be holding another meeting, sorry I'm jumping ahead on the schedule, but that will be a very important meeting where we're really starting to look at what are the next steps here to try to bring a referendum forward to the town. In between that meeting and now, unfortunately, a couple of us got sick, so we were not able to hold another meeting, but we did go to visit South Windsor's Pleasant Valley School, and that was very eye-opening, I think, to the community members that did come, as well as members of the board that were there. So this is a super important topic, and very fortunate to continue to talk about it. So yes, that is the facilities meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, John. It is a big task. You're doing a great job. Thank you. Student Program and Services, I'm going to give Janice her 2 meetings here. One was on January 29th and the other was on the 30th.
Okay, I think I pretty much said what I was going to say, but I just wanted to make sure to mention that we also had an informational presentation around the mastery-based credit assessment, which is the capstone. And in the minutes, we have, it says the current juniors will be the first class to take part in the capstone project or portfolio defense. The portfolio is a model for students to reflect on their growth in the areas of the skills and the vision of a graduate: problem-solving, communicator, collaborator. There are 24 pilot students who are going through the process early. Lessons are provided through We Connect, which is their advisory period, and pilot students are in each advisory class, and they assist other students through the project. The Google Classroom has assignments, videos, in the rubric, and they are have been looking for people to help assess the capstone projects, and I'm happy to say I will be joining them on March 7th at 7:30 in the morning. But anybody else who is able to, I'm sure there's still room for you. It's really exciting. There'll be a workshop before, so we have an idea of what we're doing. So I didn't want to leave that piece of information out from our meeting.
Thank you. That committee's been very busy. Thank you. And another busy group is our finance group on our budget workshops. Matt?
Okay, so I know that there are 3 lines here, one for each budget workshop that we have conducted, but I'm just going to wrap this all into one. So we have held multiple budget workshops with a host of participants with knowledge of the school system's needs and familiarity with our budget. Everyone's participation has been greatly appreciated. We can't stress that enough. While we do have a proposed number in mind, it is ever-changing based on discussions with the council, our state delegation, and all district stakeholders. We see what we need, we know what we want, but just like a personal or household budget, you don't always get what you want and have to make tough decisions and have tough conversations. Our Dem caucus had one of those last night, and I know that the R's had one as well, which is much appreciated. We will continue to have those discussions, and we will, of course, correspond with Michael, Sally, John, and Nat to deliver a number that we can present to the council. We are hopeful that it is a number that will reflect this board's and this town's values and will correspond with what Weathersfield Public Schools wants, needs, and can afford.
Thank you. Moving on to policy and planning, you're still on.
I already mentioned that all. Yep, you can take what I said under section 7.
Thank you. Okay, community and public relations. Marjorie?
All right, so we met on February 7th, and the bulk of the meeting was a presentation by District IT Supervisor Jeff Telke. Came back, thank you, Jeff, to mostly talk about Parent Square, and I think, a lot of parents know it exists. Obviously, that's one of the best features, is that we have like a 99.6% parent rate of usage, which is amazing, a contactable rate. But he delved into all the different tools you can use with Parent Square, which I think they're ever expanding and being used by teachers, administrators, and parents. So it was just really interesting to see all the different things you can get besides just maybe an alert once in a while or a message from the principal. So it translates into 109 different languages. I'll just go over a few things. The district uses about 21 different languages. The translation tool is amazing, where you can choose as a parent what language you want to see the information in. And then when you write a response, perhaps a direct message back to a teacher, it will translate to the teacher in English. So that's an amazing tool that really helps our community, which is so diverse, and we have so many different families that have different languages. And one of the things that our other great features is Jeff Telke and Kim Bobbin, who, if they don't have a parent on Parent Square, they will find them. And if they feel like they are having a hard time getting on because of language issue or something, they will teach them and get them the app on their phone for them. So that's why we have such a high percentage of parents who actually use Parent Square, compared to other districts where it's about 60%. We're in the high 90s. So thank you, Jeff and Kim. And so the different tools besides the direct messaging, permission slips, which I didn't know was being used more and more by teachers, which is such a great way to get permission slips out to parents without having to ask your kid to find the permission slip on the bottom of their backpack, and they forget, and they bring it to you all crumpled up and everything. So that's a great feature. There's a request for volunteers, which I understand they're using a lot more. So request maybe by a teacher or the principal at an elementary school for volunteers. That's being used tremendously. It's very successful. Report cards, obviously, we've seen those. If you're a parent, you get those. And also just one of the better features is that the teachers and the parents can communicate through it, which helps if you use a phone app, probably more so. And it also has a district calendar, which you can see when the Board of Ed meetings are. So there's no excuse, no. Meetings and other events and other dates that are happening in the district, you can actually use that. One of the things I think that John had mentioned is that some parents don't realize that you can actually turn off what groups you don't want to get messages from. If you feel like you're getting too many messages, you can actually do that as a user, but that's something to be, some information there. So secondly, we talked about the Board of Ed role being more communicated through the website. So we're going to maybe work on the next meeting or so, talking about explaining the Board of Ed's role better and getting that language out. And we are also in the works of trying to finalize a community survey for maybe a smattering of questions to go out to the community about the elementary school renovation and ideas or thoughts that parents or the community may have going forward. And finally, one of the things that we did, and I know some of the board didn't see it yet, was right before the state delegation went to session, they just started their legislative session, we created kind of an update for them that we're going to hopefully move forward with more often, every few months, just explaining kind of like the issues that we see, or just reporting. Well, one was reporting news into the schools and awards that have been given to students. One is like talking about the budget, basically the issues that Mr. Emmett talked about here, and just alerting them to kind of how different things are what things are happening at the Board of Ed and the schools, so that our state delegation can have more of a pulse on kind of the everyday issues, celebrations, moving forward, things to think about, how mandates affect our district especially, and things we might need to talk about in the future and get their support of. So that's something we just did for the first time, and we're going to move to keep that going. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Marjorie. An excellent communicator, for sure. Weathersfield Early Childhood Collaborative, WEC. Janice?
Yes, WEC met on February 2nd, and we were all talking about the storm that was coming. WEC's goal is that all Weathersfield children birth to 8 are healthy, developmentally successful learners and connected to the community. For this meeting, data was collected on the number of Weathersfield preschools, daycare centers, and home daycare there are. Since COVID, we've seen the closure of Pride and Joy Preschool, Weathersfield United Methodist Church Preschool, and Bright Beginnings, representing a loss of 162 slots in town. What we don't know is, we know that there are 2 new large daycare centers that have opened in town, and we don't know how many of those slots have been absorbed by those daycare centers. So also, many families need full-day preschool, and for many, affordability is an issue. Some families have opted to send their children to Hartford Schools programs, which meet both of those needs. And I asked Kim Bobbin to check on that, if those are correct programs. I know of some people in town who have used those. Meanwhile, the Learning Center Preschool, TLC, in response to the kindergarten entrance age change, will be offering an afternoon program for 4 and 5-year-olds, the BERS, the September, October, November, and December children. The TLC teachers report that through WEC, their partnership with the Weathersfield Public Schools has strengthening opening opportunities for better communication between their families and the public schools, professional development they've been able to join in, and getting referrals for screenings for special ed students with special ed needs. And those screenings are done by Weathersfield Schools. Liz Freitas, who is the Weathersfield Public Schools Special Ed Curriculum Director, reported that because WEC is able to provide families with information about services that our schools provide, they have been able to provide 84 preschool students with special ed services as a result of that. Another item, WEC ran out of money for their Yukon PEP program, Parents Educating Parents. It's a very valuable program. But creative thinking through collaboration between Kim Bobbin and Erica Texera from the Youth Services Department, money to continue PEP will be provided through the Weathersfield Drug-Free Community Grant. And it's actually, doing things like that is a requirement of applying to renew the grant, so it works out well. Next item, Sally Destoli reported that the screening for BER children, parents who have want waivers for their children who will not quite be 5 yet by September 1st, will be based on the fall kindergarten benchmarks. And she said, we are all looking to the state to make waiver requirements more consistent across the state. And Weathersfield Public Schools will be looking to make the September 1st age cutoff more firm and consistent. There was also included in the meeting, the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood, OEC, shared results of their 2022 parent survey. Unfortunately, only 67 families responded, so it's not a good sampling, but from those families, we found that 81% believe that they have reliable child care, 58% of those families feel highly stressed, and the average monthly child care cost is $1,078. So that was pretty much
Thank you.
it.
I was just thinking, too, we have to get even more information out about our pre-K and K
Yes.
as we move
There
along.
was actually charts about with the numbers and where they are, and, we talked about how, well, we know who's in the preschools, but there's family daycare. Those numbers have been a little more elusive, but Kim gave us a really, really good chart.
Good, thank you. We'll have more info on that then to come. Thank you. Okay, and we have me, CREC. So my report is on CREC, CABE, HASA, and the legislators' breakfast. So the annual legislative forum was at the state capitol on Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. CREC, CABE, HASA, which is superintendents, and legislators were invited and in attendance. The breakfast was a great opportunity to share the region's legislative priorities with elected officials. There were 14 representatives and senators, including Amy Bello and Matt Lesser, and over 50 area superintendents, local board members, and others in attendance. Michael Emmett, Janice, and I were in attendance for the Wethersfield Public Schools. The meeting focused on the issues around funding for magnet schools, special education excess cost, and the governor's proposed budget. The key word in the governor's proposed budget is proposed. The Connecticut General Assembly sets up a 2-year budget which allows school districts to know the amount of state dollars for 2 years. This is the second year of this budget, and towns knew what monies were budgeted for them in 24-25. So we were there to hear and understand the impact of the governor's proposed budget on Connecticut school systems. Wethersfield is impacted because of the proposed elimination of the magnet tuition cap, the state's obligation to pay tuition to sending school districts. This change negatively impacts the Wethersfield budget by $414,000. Also, the excess cost reimbursement. Wethersfield's percentage of the reimbursement could decrease from 88% to potentially 70%. I know this has been said tonight, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again. This change negatively impacts Wethersfield's budget by $378,000. Those two big changes are followed by other decreases that are consequential to any school system in the governor's proposed budget. We are communicating with our liaison to the legislature, Emily Zambrello, who gives us fabulous information, and also with our legislative representatives to keep up with any news from the Assembly on what the second-year budget will eventually look like. And thank you, and more to come. And we're getting to the end here, but we have the best here, Human Resources and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Bobby. On the 21st, we met the HR committee. Trent Donahue invited Mr. Chris Monroe to give us an overview of our insurance plan in the town and to compare it to the state partnership. It was brought up as we needed an overview of it to see what the cost would be. He gave us a great presentation on it. Our providers are Cigna, and so we just talked about the cost for it, and it's going to be cost-effective for us to continue with this plan for now. It's obviously something we'll continue to consider and compare to the state partnership state plan. Mr. Monroe brought up that there should be 3 buckets for each staff member, physical health, emotional health, and financial health, and we as a board wanted to implement some ideas to maybe help out for the staff to think about that. PD time allotted for staff members to go to a health financial fair, Liz provided, offered some assistance in that area too, to like give little mini videos, so we're going to discuss that with Sally to see if it's okay to do that, to send that out to staff, because we want to make sure that our staff is taken care of, that they feel like we support them, in not just their emotional and physical health, but also financially to be set for their future, especially because, teachers work hard for what they do. We had an overview of the staffing and hiring update. It kind of evened out. 8 employees came off leave of absence, and then 5 new leaves were submitted. Overall, it did not impact the leave of absence, but the HR office is working hard to make sure that those positions are covered. The survey update, we gave Sally some questions just to overview. It's almost ready to go out to kind of do a dipstick on the climate of the district for staff, parents, and students alike. The biggest concern is just the anonymity of the survey, to make sure that students and staff and parents can answer honestly, so we can really have a good conversation afterwards. And we want to continue to work on good news for, for not just teachers and students, but also HR staff, just ways to say thank you for all you guys do. So no other business was brought up, and I think that's it.
Thank you. You're a hardworking committee with great background knowledge. Thank
A lot
you.
of information, but I kind of want to give you the good stuff.
Thank you. Okay, and finally, we came to the finale here, is Matt again with Finance that we just had.
Okay, so prior to tonight's Board of Ed meeting, we held a Finance Committee meeting. Our 23-24 current year budget currently sits at 0.04% under budget. I would say in a $61 million budget, it's pretty negligible, so that's good work right there. I'm going to go over the details of the meeting, a la Ken Lesser, with 3 major takeaways. One, we talked about outplacements. We had the same amount of public school outplacements as projected at a slightly higher cost. We had 1 additional private school outplacement than projected, also at a slightly higher cost. But on a positive note, we have been able to service more and more 18 to 22-year-olds than we have outplaced in the past. So that's a good thing. We can keep kids here and save money. Point 2, open choice revenue from the state is set to come in, also up from last year. So thanks to the state for delivering on those funds. We could use more of that. Open choice students now represent 3.5% of our students, at $8,000 a student from the state. The key word in that phrase is a word, it's not a number, and that's our, similar to we. These open choice students, they contribute to the fabric of our school system, and we appreciate them immensely as part of our community.
Thank you.
Third point, more 24-25 budget talk. We're trying to whittle down the numbers that we're talking of and thinking of and throwing around to an exact percent that can then ultimately be presented to the town. That work is going on and will resume. We would like the number to be bipartisan and a number that doesn't get cut. That budget will ultimately be presented at the Board of Ed meeting on Tuesday, March 12th.
Thank you. A lot of work there. Thank you. So we have meetings scheduled, much shorter list. Facilities and Maintenance Committee on February 28th at 6 o'clock, that's this Wednesday. And Weathersfield Early Childhood Collaborative, WEC, on March 11th, 2024. So thank you on all that work, everyone. So is there anyone wishing to make a public comment? Please come on up to the podium and state your name and address, and may I remind you that you are limited to 5 minutes. Okay, are there any board comments? Janice?
On February 24th, I attended the Charles Wright PTO meeting. Their PTO is gearing up for the 6th grade end-of-the-year festivities and events. They're looking to have a step-up day for 6th grade, and that would be, they think, either June 10th or the 11th, depending on when we set the graduation date. Before then, at this meeting, they were hoping to have a school dance on March 15th. I'll find out if they are having that or not tomorrow night at their meeting. But at the time of their last meeting, they were looking for someone to chair this event. They did well on their holiday fundraisers and events. And on Friday night, this Friday night, March 1st, there will be a science night at Charles Wright from 6 to 8 p.m. And this is really cool. On April 13th, it will be Charles Wright Night at the Yard Goats. And teacher Vic Sitaro was chosen as educator of the game and will throw out the first pitch.
Oh, how cool is that? That's
pretty
wonderful.
cool. Yeah.
I'll have to email him. That's great, thank you. Okay, anybody else for closing comments? John?
Yeah, just a couple of things from me. First, something fun. Last Thursday, I attended the Wolfpack game at the Excel Center as part of Henry Elementary to watch the 4th through 6th graders sing the national anthem, and they did a terrific job. Shout out to my daughter Claire, she did a good job. And so, yeah, really great job, everybody who put that event together, including former board member Lou Michaels, actually, who was involved with that as well. A couple business-related things. A couple town council meetings ago, I was in attendance to see them approve the building committee for our HVAC project at the middle school. Just one comment on that. I really hope that in the future we can utilize this building committee for other projects that might come forward to them. I would implore our town council to look into approving that building committee for further projects beyond HVAC. I think it's going to be very important to utilize the skills in this building committee for potential other projects that come forward from this board. Thank you. And then last, you've heard a lot about budgets. I'm going to give a shout out to a meeting that's going to occur March 5th at the community, I believe it's the community room in the library with our with Bobby Granado and our Mayor Ken Lesser. So in the sake of transparency, I think the community should definitely attend that meeting to learn more about the budget between us as well as town council.
Thank you. Anyone else? Matt?
I would just like to say that I appreciate all the work that I've seen everybody put in during this year's budget season. It's probably the most difficult part of being a board member, but so this is my 3rd budget cycle as a board member, and I would say that this one has had the most energy and the most thoughtfulness and the most input. I know that we met as a Dem caucus last night, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to factor in what the Republican caucus is also saying. Everybody up here, whether D or R, is paying attention to what this school district needs. We work together, and we're going to try to come together with a united front on this budget. So thank you all for your work on this. It's noticed and appreciated.
Great comments, thank you. Anyone else? Well, let me finish up here because, interestingly enough, a group of board members were recently asked, why does it seem that whenever the Board of Ed monies are cut from the budget, that there does not seem to be a noticeable change in our schools? Well, I'd like to speak to that seemingly harmless change to our schools when our budget is reduced by hundreds of thousands and even $1 million year after year. First, our schools are the reason so many young families move to Wethersfield, which means that those for sale signs are up and down with amazing speed. The teachers and administrators in our schools have created a learning environment second only to those systems that have 21st century buildings. Learning is exciting because our teachers are masters at it. Ask a student in our school if they like going to school, and most times the answer is resounding yes at every grade. The teachers and staff in our school are the main reason I believe that our schools thrive. But cutting our budget year after year does deprive our students. Other systems in our DIRG have spent more money per student and therefore have more to offer in educating their young people. Our DIRG, which is an acronym for District Reference Group, is comprised of the schools in our state that have similar incomes, education, occupation, family structure, poverty, home language, and district enrollment. The towns in our DIRG include Rocky Hill, Newington, Berlin, Cromwell, Old Saybrook, and 23 in all. Wethersfield has steadily dropped in the DIRG for per pupil spending. Old Saybrook is first in spending with $25,787 per student, and Weathersfield is 19 out of 23 in the DIRG, with $17,864 per pupil spending. So that money that you hear from these districts in the higher portion of our DIRG allows those districts to work many programs that the Weathersfield Public School does not have, such as foreign language in the elementary schools, STEM specialist at elementary schools, and STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, coding programs, gifted and talented, summer school for all, before and after daycare at our schools, each school, assistant principals at big schools, middle school department heads, and middle school sports. So as it appears that our schools are fine after a budget cut, a lack of funds creates a lack of progress. Weathersfield Public School needs money to move forward, not to stay in place, and not to go backwards. Thank you. Okay, and we're going to move on to Mary, our artist in residence. We're so proud of you.
Thank you.
For comments on life at the high school.
There's been a lot going on at WHS this February. Winter sports will be ending on some great seasons. Last Saturday, the 17th, our cheer team won the title of CCC North Champions for the second year in a row. And last Tuesday, boys basketball won against Hartford Public at their senior night. Also last Tuesday, boys swim won their meet against Newington, naming them CCC North Champions. On Saturday, boys hockey beat North Haven 5-2 at their senior night, and also on Saturday, the WHS dance team placed second in Palm and third in Jazz at the CIAC Championships. WHS has also been doing a lot to help our community. This week, the week leading up to February break was Spirit Week, with Pink and Red for Valentine's Day, Eagle Spirit Day, and Pajama Day to support the Jonathon fundraiser. The Jonathon fundraiser raises money to support the Connecticut Children's Medical Center, and the Interact Club helped the high school participate for our first time this year. Last Thursday, a group of WHS students went to Hartford to help build a house with Habitat for Humanity. And this week, the National Arts Honor Society is continuing the Empty Bowls Project, a fundraiser raising money to fight hunger in our community, and are glazing bowls in the art room after school throughout the rest of the week. And throughout March, there will be a book drive for elementary schools. Finally, the drama program has worked hard this winter, and their production of Mystery of Edwin Drood will be performed next weekend, and the ending will be up to the audience to vote on each night.
Thank you. Okay, is there any unfinished business tonight?
I have a
Never
question.
any unfinished business.
Mr. Emmett, when is the last day of school? Do we know?
The last day of school at this point in time would be the 13th of June. That's a Thursday. 13th of June.
down, yeah.
Pending any other snow days. And then, again, I think it was in the Friday update at the next board meeting, we're far enough out where we want to set the graduation date, so that's, I know, something that is of great importance to all of our seniors. But right now, at this point in time, we've had a total of 2 snow days, so last day of school would be the 13th of June.
Okay, we got it right down here. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Objections? Abstentions? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.